Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. This is the next webinar in our series, and we are joined here by the team at the University of Sheffield. So we started off by mentioning if folks want to post where they're calling in from or what they're excited to learn from this session. But overall, today we're going to be talking about co-creating with students and faculty at the University of Sheffield. And we're joined here by Dr. Mark Walker and Dave and Matt as well from the Learning Design team. So I will start off by passing it off to them to introduce themselves. And then we'll jump into two conversations, the first one being around using AI and immersive environments to amplify student voice and get students talking about the use of AI in higher education. And then the second use case, this will be presented by Dr. Mark Walker, will be around educational escape rooms for medical education training. And then we'll leave about 15-20 minutes for Q&A. Please feel free to post your questions throughout the conversation, and we'll keep track of those for folks to answer at the end. And then we'll do about 5 minutes of wrap up and talk about our next session. So I will pass it off to Dr. Mark Walker to introduce himself, and then we'll hear introductions from Matt Gilchrist and also Dave Holloway. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Walker. I am a GP in Sheffield. I'm also a graduate of the University of Sheffield, so I've gone full cycle here. I'm employed by the University of Sheffield 2 days a week as a teacher in general practice to train undergraduate medical students. And through this role, I've met Matt and Dave, who are about to introduce themselves, and with the help of some students, we've helped develop some educational escape rooms to enhance their teaching experience, which I'll talk about in a moment. But I will pass over to Matt and Dave to introduce themselves. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks very much. Yeah, so I'm Mark Gilchrist. I'm a digital learning officer here in the Central Digital Learning team at the University of Sheffield. So I work with Dave, who's going to introduce himself in a second. He's sitting directly opposite me. So I work with Dave on supporting Wonda here at the University of Sheffield, amongst a variety of other digital learning tools such as Blackboard, Kaltura, which you may be familiar with. So yeah, nice to meet you all, and I'll pass straight over to Dave.
Hiya, sorry, I just realised I'm controlling the slides and totally forgot to move the next one on. Hello, my name is Dave Holloway. I am a senior digital learning advisor here at the University of Sheffield, working alongside Matt and alongside Mark. I am a former filmmaker who's been working in education now for about 10 years, and I am ostensibly sort of the digital learning lead here with Wonda. So I do a lot of jobs that I manage a lot of people and the audience do. So I liaise on a regular basis, and one of my privileges here is I get to amplify all the really good stuff that we do, all the really fun, interesting, curious, innovative work that we do, which is how we got engaged with Mark, and you'll learn a little bit more about his work later on. But we've been working with Wonda now for, I think, about 3 or 4 years. We're creating a lot of 360 experiences. We create an awful lot of avatar experiences. So it's becoming more used quite widely across the university now, and so I've seen a lot of innovative and exciting uses of it. So we're just going to talk through a couple that we've done here, working with students who we've co-designed with. Mine and Matt's will be about 10 minutes. We're very much the support act to Mark's innovative and exciting role. Just to cue up there, Mark, no expectation at all. So we're going to talk about how we amplify the student voice, how we get to hear, maybe how we use AI and the Wonda platform to hear from students who perhaps we wouldn't have the luxury of hearing from otherwise. We do an awful lot of work with students here. We don't work directly in sort of teaching and training them in the digital learning team, but what we do is promote innovative uses of how to work with them, and we find getting their feedback is an essential part of our role, so enable us to support all the technologies we use here. And one of the challenges we face it's a nice challenge to have, but one challenge we face is that when we ask for student co-creators or we ask for student input, we are often struck with having the quote-unquote the same sort of people. We get students who are confident, for whom English is their first language, or who have no problem speaking with academics and professional staff on their own level, and are basically keen and eager to be involved in the life cycle of the university, which is fantastic, and we absolutely love those people, and we would never ever want to do without them. But as a result of this, you do tend to see sort of the same hands or the same sort of hands raised, and you do end up with relatively similar viewpoints after a while, because many students who would be interested in taking part or interested in contributing to our work, they sort of struggle. They struggle with, public speaking, which is entirely understandable. Often, of course, they have very busy timetables, so they can't quite make the events that we put on. Geographically, we have students all over the world, so they're not always able to make it to Sheffield, or not always for reasons to attend in their own time frame. An awful lot of our students have English not as their first language, so they don't immediately feel overly comfortable, perhaps speaking in public. And of course, there's always some health or some neurodiversity issues, which maybe make them less willing or feeling less comfortable to put their hand up and volunteer. As well, of course, lots of other invisible barriers, which would make somebody not want to volunteer to work with staff. And so what you end up with is, unintentionally entirely, a relatively narrow representation of students' thoughts and feelings, despite our best efforts. And again, we're very, very comfortable, we're very happy with those students who volunteer, but we really want to try and find a way in which we can perhaps hear from underrepresented voices. We recently had an education conference here in Sheffield. We had about 200 or so of our colleagues and staff attend for a one-day spectacular, where we came together to talk about all things learning and teaching. And one of the sessions that Matt and I were involved with producing was canvassing students, or hearing back from student opinions on how they use AI in their studies, how they use AI across the university. And the format that we wanted was very much an open panel discussion hosted by academic staff, or in this instance, professional services staff. And the idea was we wanted to put essentially a bunch of students on stage in front of all of our academic and professional services colleagues and have them talk honestly and openly about how they use AI. We very much didn't want them to be towing the party line. We very much didn't want them to be just speaking about what we wanted them to hear. We absolutely wanted to know what they genuinely thought, what they were genuinely doing. Interest was high. We put it out through lots of networks. We have a very good student volunteer network here, and we have a student union. A lot of people came back interested, but there were, the availability and the comfort of a lot of volunteers varied quite wildly. There were students concerned it was during the exam period, whether or not they would be available or have the time to prepare properly. Again, we have a lot of students overseas, or who are not directly in Sheffield, so they struggle to maybe attend, and we very much wanted to have a live aspect to the session. And quite legitimately, there was some anxiety around discussing what is a relatively contentious subject in front of 100 staff members who are in the room. I mean, it's understandable that a student necessarily wouldn't put themselves out there and talk about an emerging technology, which could be misinterpreted or misconstrued in some small way in front of so many members of staff. So they were the concerns we approached, the concerns we saw. And so what we were really looking for was a nice, beautiful, tactful, flexible approach in a way in which we could capture these insights. I shall hand over to Matt.
Cheers, Dave. Do you want to just mute your mic for us, Dave? Cheers. So the solution, what do? We used Wonda avatars to develop digital personas of real life students. And this is the first time that we've tried doing this, generating representational examples of real people in this kind of way. And we were really interested to see how this was going to turn out. So I did the work on this. I started by spending an hour with each of the students and interviewed each of them on 10 predefined questions. So it was consistent between kind of the questions that all of the different students will be asked in this session. And all those questions were on their personal perspectives of AI in their discipline. So as well as this, us gathering stuff from them, it was also an opportunity for us to give them some training on how to use Wonda. So it's a really good development opportunity for them. So I transcribed their answers, furiously typing. I managed to kind of tame it into a system prompt, which you might be familiar with in Wonda's AI avatars. And I'll show you that in a bit more detail in a second. But really quickly, I'm just going to share the back end of the experience, just so you can see a little bit about how it's put together. So hopefully that's coming through to you now. So you can see that this is created using a 3D environment, which predominantly was so that we could add the avatars using this option here, the AI avatars. So we chose not to use a 3D room and instead to just use a kind of the skybox, so a 360 image. And what you can see here is Weston Park. This is our kind of lovely local lunch spot. I was sitting just here today, having my lunch in the sun, which is lovely. So yes, we've set it so that there's no 3D room, and then the user navigation is locked. So essentially it's just a kind of static 360 globe, which we've situated the avatars in. So at this point, I'm going to hop into the launched experience. So this is how it looks to anyone who's joined. We've got the main display there, which just has some brief instructions about how to use the space. And then I'm going to hop into this student here. This is Ella Stevenson. And I'll just select edit to go into the prompt. So really briefly, I'll just explain what we find in this window. So Ella, this is not the student's real name. It was anonymized at their own request. They were a little bit concerned that someone they know might actually come across this experience and kind of learn all about their perspectives on AI. And it might be that she was a bit nervous about it being accused that she was misusing it in some way. Really good way of getting them involved. The students designed the avatars themselves using Ready Player Me and provided me with that URL. And they chose their voice as well to kind of represent them in the best possible way. The structure of the prompts is the same across all three students. So I'll just kind of briefly show you this particular one. So we've broken them down into these headings just to help structure the prompt. So we've got Ella Stevenson. She's a third-year PhD in English literature. And the other students, we had a final year medic and an undergraduate business management student. So we had a really good range of perspectives there in the kind of different disciplines to draw on. We've got some standard prompts here. So basically setting the context of what's going on. We're in an education conference session. And actually, on reflection, given that the session has now passed, we could edit this and just make it a kind of generic resource that anyone could access and use. So you'll see as well that we've introduced some safeguards as well, because the AI avatars have a tendency to misbehave a little bit sometimes if they're not kind of given strict instructions. So they've been instructed not to ask any follow-up questions, to just respond to the questions they're asked. And at the start, they were kind of overly polite and they were asking how we were doing. And we've just kind of built that into the prompts because we didn't want that to be a feature of the session. So just skipping down a little bit further, your perspectives on AI. So this is essentially the text from the interview, which I've tamed into a prompt. And you'll see that we've not added the actual sort of subheadings for each question here. The idea being that when it was asked something, it would draw on any of the sort of content that was said, and it wouldn't just get siloed into that specific question. So hoping to kind of be as natural as possible. So Dave, do you just want to hop back into the slides for us? So after I did a bit of stress testing and kind of editing the prompt, I sent it through to the students and they tested it out themselves. They were really pleased with how it was representing their points of view. There were a couple of cases where there was a bit of embellishment and they kind of started drawing on some opinions that hadn't been covered in the interview. But that student said that they were quite happy that that was something that they would have probably said. So that wasn't really an issue. And I've put a couple of quotes up on screen there. They really enjoyed it. They really enjoyed the opportunity to discuss AI with me. They enjoyed the opportunity to be involved despite not being able to kind of attend the session. And they really enjoyed learning about Wonda as well. So yeah, with that, I'll pass back over to Dave.
Thank you, Matt. So the idea of the conference experience was I was hosting this particular session, and we very much wanted to make it a sort of a multimedia contributing experience. So we wanted to flip between all different types of student engagement. So in the end, we had 3 students who appeared live and in person, standing on stage with a microphone, who could field obviously live questions, some of which we had read in advance, which we used as the prompts Matt talked about, and then some just live from the audience. We had 1 student who prepared some written responses, and that was read out by a member of staff. We had 1 student who'd filmed themselves and provided a couple of video responses to their questions. And we had the avatars. So the idea was we could ask a question of someone live in the room, and then we could ask a question of someone with a video feed, and then we could go to the avatars, ask a question of the avatars, they would respond. And that way we could kind of flit in between all the 4 different inputs and sort of make it a truly multimedia experience. We did see a few moments, and Matt touched upon sometimes avatars can misbehave. We did see a few moments of maybe something was unscripted, a few vague hallucinations, but there was nothing in there which would be wildly contentious or anything in there which maybe wouldn't have fairly represented the students that we used. There we are, that's us live in the day. Just there's me in my fabulous shirt. And as you can see, we've got our 3 students, the top picture there. We've got 3 students on the left-hand side speaking, and on the bottom picture on the right-hand side, there we are speaking to the avatars. People could throw questions out, and me being near the microphone, I would respond to those questions and ask students on their behalf. So I believe the slides have been shared in advance, so people should have a copy of the slides. You're welcome to go and have a go yourself. If you have your mobile device out, you want to scan your QR code, you're welcome, but otherwise I'm going to quickly pop across to the actual experience and just have a really quick chat with our avatars just to give you an idea of what they said. So we met Ella already, so let's go over to Toshio and just see how he's doing. Hi Toshio, could you tell us your thoughts broadly on AI in education?
I see AI as a valuable tool in education, enhancing productivity and efficiency. It helps students understand complex topics, structure essays, and even prepare for job interviews. However, it's essential to use it responsibly to avoid over-reliance and ensure we develop critical thinking skills.
Could you give me an example of how you've used it in your studies?
I've used AI to help structure my essays. By inputting the essay question, I receive an outline that suggests key points and word counts for each section. This gives me a solid starting point and helps organize my thoughts effectively.
So as we all know, the voice recognition process of Wonda is really quite fantastic, and so even me with my garbled accent is able to be understood very clearly by the avatars. I'll have a quick word with Sandra. Sandra, what do you see the main issues are around using AI? What are the main conflicts?
The main issues around using AI include data privacy concerns, the potential for misinformation, and the risk of over-reliance on technology. Conflicts arise between the need for efficiency and the importance of human oversight in medical decisions. Additionally, there's a concern about how AI might impact job security in healthcare, despite its benefits.
So, as you see there, it's a wide number of opinions. Those are genuine opinions, they're the real thoughts held by the students. And you can go on and have as many conversations with that as you like. In the interest of brevity, I shall move on. The response from the attendees was actually really positive. There is obviously a slight concern. It's a bit of a gimmick. You're using AI to discuss AI, how actually accurate is it? But it was received pretty well, actually, and the attendees kind of got involved and took it on board in the spirit with which it was intended. It was helpful, of course, that the topic aligned with the technology that we were using. But what was genuinely noted, and a number of people spoke to me afterwards, was they definitely recognised as a sort of a step towards a more inclusive and representative form of student engagement. And this is where I think I begin to realise the true value of these avatars sits in that it lies in access. Tools like Wonda really enable participation, but especially like neurodivergent students who are uncomfortable speaking to other people, uncomfortable speaking in large groups of people. Let's face it, it's a lot of us. Students who might, chronic illness or invisible barriers, people who aren't able to attend on the day, people who are uncomfortable doing it, quote unquote, live. This way, we found that our students can share their insights in a much more safe, much more controlled way, and we're respecting the boundaries that they have and they are concerned about. And the technology is actually really broadened the voices that we would have in the space. Earlier, Toshio and Sandra, we probably wouldn't have heard from, we wouldn't have had the opportunity to hear from. But by using this technology, their opinions and their thoughts have been shared and have been heard, but we've done so in a way which is sort of safe and controlled. I think there's a lot of value in this. I'm really quite excited about the idea of digitizing or avatarizing real students. I really like the idea of having welcome weeks. We do a lot of online open days, so I like the idea of having real students and spaces who have been avatared and then can sort of speak on their behalf and answer questions. So much more than just a chatbot, something which is real and engaging. we have an awful lot of campus tours. Our most popular experiences on Wonda are by far our campus tours. And I love the idea of being able to put students into a space on campus saying, this is my room, this is how I live in my room, this is how I live in the space. On a Tuesday night, it's great. Hawaiian pizza night is brilliant. I like the idea of having all those kind of personalized tips, which really you wouldn't be able to hear or wouldn't exist on a one-to-one basis if you were doing it live. And it's really developed like a new and kind of interesting, flexible way in which we can engage with students. And I think there's legitimate concern that we're kind of digitizing or ruling out real life examples. That's not the case. It's very much expanding the idea of human connection. But it really does recognize that people are very different and students thrive in very different ways. And using these, we can embrace the diversity that they have and represent them in a safe and controlled way. And I think as educators or digital education professionals, it's our responsibility to create those spaces and make them available for those students, because otherwise they risk not falling through the cracks. They still exist, but they wouldn't feel confident or comfortable putting their hand up. And this way, I think we've managed to find a way in which they can do that. So that's the experience we've made. I'm going to pass over now to Mark, who I believe very much is the headliner in this instance, to talk through his experience that he's created. Mark, do you want to take over sharing of the screen? Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, I was on mute. Thank you. Yes, I should be able to.
Or if you want, you can just say next slide, please, Dave, and I'll move on.
Well, because I'll need to present from here for the demonstration, won't I? So if I can get this sorted. So entire screen 2, slideshow that. So is that working? Is that okay? Yeah, brilliant. Hi, yes. Hello, everybody. So yes, I am Dr. Mark Walker, and I am a teacher in general practice at the University of Sheffield. And at the start of this year, so around January time, I made a move to think about how we could reinvigorate some of our small group tutorial sessions. And it was just thinking about how times are changing and how there's a shift in how students maybe approach their studies, and maybe we need to think about a change from our traditional approaches to teaching. So the traditional approaches with large lectures, we're aware that student attendance is diminishing. We maybe get about 50% of students at some of our lectures. Students have attended clinical placement, communication skills sessions, where students will turn up and speak with an actor, a real life person, and practice how they consult with patients in a controlled environment. Small group tutorials, where students will be in groups of 5, 6, 7 and have a tutor there to help facilitate a conversation about a medical problem, and personal study. But it's how students are approaching this. And there are the students, the attendance and the interactions we're having with students was suggesting that we need to be thinking about other ways to engage with students. And one of the challenges we have in medicine is learning to be a good doctor versus passing exams. So it's trying to get students to understand how they can practice their clinical skills, their clinical reasoning skills, how to apply the knowledge they've got in different circumstances which they can take into their careers, versus just accumulating knowledge to pass exams but not actually applying it. So I was thinking about how AI, different spaces, using the avatars, can help develop students in different ways, maybe in different spaces that aren't the traditional classroom spaces. Especially if we as the doctors, the teachers, are having less contact time with students in the small group sessions in large lecture theatres. But we still need to retain that clinical reasoning skills, which is fundamental to any doctor developing their skills and how to help patients in future. So this need to re-engage students with attendance changing, students using different resources online, using less traditional, the book approach of reading around subjects they've seen. So that a desired outcome, how we can augment teaching sessions with virtual reality, using avatars, using artificial intelligence, to try and improve engagement and attendance. And using the avatars to create, to allow students to develop their history-taking skills, clinical reasoning skills, presenting information to the, how practice presenting information to patients through an avatar, which hopefully the whole process of having a unique learning experience will help them reinforce information in their mind, will help them to retain information from interesting learning experiences to then apply themselves. So there's this, this is what we're hoping to achieve by changing some of the approaches to engagement with the students. And one of the ways we've done this is to develop an avatar, to develop avatars, employ them into Wonda spaces, but to co-create this with the students. So in January this year, I managed to get a student on board who had a full 6 weeks of, one, was developing a teaching space themselves, and two, were able to give information, feedback during the development stages of developing these virtual reality teaching spaces. So we had insight from a third-year medical student who was part of the team creating these spaces, and to allow them to give ongoing feedback. I'm going to demonstrate it in a few moments, and then I can talk about how we're going to go for the ongoing assessment of this. So I'm just going to just come out of this. So challenges in the development stage. So I've taken you to an editing. In fact, I'm going to take you through into the space that the students will see. So when students enter one of the rooms, this is a consultation room. This is my consultation room in my practice. We have instructions. So when the students log in, they'll be sitting as a group in a room. Is how it's initially going to be designed, with a GP in the room who's still facilitating the conversation to push the boundaries of their knowledge. This will be on a large board in front of the student group, and they will sit and they will go through the introduction instructions. They're directed to speak with Mr. Jai Sarir, who is their patient. And the escape room angle is so the students can progress through different spaces, through different rooms. So each room has a different angle to the clinical care the patient needs. So in this first room, as they go through the clinical steps, they'll collect 4 digits to make a telephone call to order the next investigation, which takes them to the next room. This is just a disclaimer, so the students know that they have to ask appropriate questions. So it's done in the rooms have been designed so they cascade. So the students should go through each space in a stepwise fashion to build the correct information. They can talk to the avatar, Mr. Jai Sarir, here at any time. And we're trying to pitch the level at the students so they get a bit of an idea of how a GP would work. So they can look at previous consultation notes, read information. They can see what the last doctor thought, the investigation tests that were requested. They can see other aspects of the patient's medical history. They can see a medication list. And they can get back to this information by clicking through. And as you see, as you click through, as it cascades, more icons appear to allow movement to different stages. So then they can work through blood test results, and they can gather the information. They can interpret these results as they go through. And then they get to questions which prompt them as well. So they see this blood test result. It's a very straightforward question. So which investigation would be appropriate to order next? And the answer would be echo. And that gives them the next digit. So they collect the digits as they go through in different parts. So the digit being the numerical value here. And that allows them to advance through the room. So once they've gone through all the aspects of the room, they can punch the code into the space here, and it takes them through to the next room. So it's all seamless. So they don't have to go out. It goes from one step to the next. So the students have to be able to look at the results, look at the tests, interpret the tests, answer questions, and then if they speak with Mr. Jai Sarir here, they can find out what he wants to know today. So hello, how are you today? And we'll see that I'm okay today. Thank you for asking. Which test results would you like to discuss first?
Oh, Mark, we can't hear the audio.
Oh, is it not coming through?
But it's okay. We can continue
Okay,
and folks can read the text. But there is audio coming in on your end, so just so
okay,
folks
so I
know.
thought it was presenting from a tab. I thought it would have worked. Sorry. But you can see, so, and similar to what Matt and Dave have demonstrated. So we have, so scroll up. It's because I'm in this. I'll go to it in a second. So, but this works very well from a medical interaction. I'm very impressed with this. I mean, I think this is the working through the case and being able to discuss it as a group and interpreting the test results. And in the different rooms, there's different things to do with the clinical care and discuss it with the patient. But I was very impressed with the way the AI here, you can really create a full, realistic conversation with the patient. This patient has got a full history about their heart failure. So they've asked about the blood test results before I just sidestep the conversation, which would be a bit unnatural in reality. But if I just ask about, so can you tell me your symptoms? That's a very broad question. So, and you can ask very pointed questions. Can you tell me your medication? So it works really well. And if you were to sidestep this into a different scenario, if you wanted patients to discuss, perhaps have a conversation with a angry, aggressive patient, which is quite hard to simulate, I'm sure we could get this to work like that. So you could get the students to think about things, consultations, which are quite difficult to perhaps just to get experience of, things like that. So it's a difficult consultation. So it's fantastic. And in later rooms where you can force the AI to ask questions again in like a cascading manner. So like in a sequence. So you can ask, do you have any questions? And as you give an answer, the next question comes in. You can force the AI prompts to do that. So you can get the AI avatar to ask you, the doctor, questions about their health, which you then have to respond to by looking at the investigations and the test results in the room. So it really builds quite well. So the AI here works really well. Very, very impressed with it, really. So this is sort of room one. And as you go through, you can just pull up the results, and the students have to make an interpretation of this. And then just going back to this room, so you can see how when you're building the space, it's everything is layered. It's layer upon layer. And as people who use Wonda, you will know this. It does get quite complex at times when you're creating this many layers to get things to pop up in the right place, but it's definitely doable. And this worked, really well. I'll just pull up one of the other rooms. So similar space here. This is where we talk about prescribing in this room. And then in the final room, unfortunately, Mr. Jai Sarir enters more end-stage heart failure. So you do a home visit. You can have a conversation with Mr. Jai Sarir's daughter, and she's the one who's programmed to have a series of questions to ask you, like what's going to happen next type questions. And this room works well. You can pick up, the documents from the table. You as the group, the student looking at this has to interpret the information from the sheet. They have to interpret a bit of advanced care planning. So what students would write, what the patient's beliefs are, like what they want from their healthcare. And this is how we document it in Sheffield in the UK. And also they need to think about what medications are appropriate to prescribe to make sure somebody's comfortable at the end of life. And there's questions which get embedded with this. So they have to justify which medications are used. So it works well. So you can build this whole space. And then when you get to the end, you can get it to load into the debrief space. So this is a space which I'm building. So just to have a natural end to the teaching session. Oh, I've got on some sort of loop here. Is that? Yep. Okay. So there's more information here about the clinical situation they've been in, the clinical problems they face. They can gather more information here. And also when the tutorial finishes, you know, they can sit as a group and they know there's a time for them to talk about the experience they've just had. So they're going to talk about what they learned, what they need to go away and learn, what was challenging about the case, because some challenges are intertwined here. So they move through 3 different rooms in the space. I'm going to show you lastly which I need to pull up, the room which the student developed, which is the most complex room and is fantastic. So this room is, this last room I'm going to show is going to be given to the students before they turn up. So they're going to do what you've seen in the tutorial where they were together as a group, but before they come, they're going to have a bit of flipped classroom, bit of pre-work, understand how Wonda works, get used to the technology. And this is what the third year medical student developed, and this is really quite complex. So he's used these card boxes here to give the instructions to the reader. As you go through the tasks in this room, you get a tick in each box. So if we, for example, pick up this telephone, we've got a voicemail here. So in this room, this is very much an escape room. So you have to, oops, so it's repeating again.
It's not coming through to us, Mark, so don't worry.
Fine. So this is very much an escape room where you have to get some information out of each part of the room to progress, to complete the room, to exit the room. So each icon will lead you to something. And the patient has heart failure. And in heart failure is a grading system called the New York grading system of heart failure, classification of heart failure. So there's some clues which knock around the room, which lead you to think about New York. So for example, in this receipt here, so you'll be thinking about, and you can think about what lifestyle changes, what might predispose Mr. Jai, our patient, to getting heart failure. So we think about the lifestyle approach in this room. So we're looking around his house, what is happening here, what leads him to get heart failure. So we think about, he's a smoker, he's eating some processed food here, the bacon, sausages. But on the receipt, we've got a big apple. So obviously the nickname for New York. So it directs the learner to think about that. And then we go to his driving license, ask the person the questions, what 2 pieces of information are risk factors for developing heart failure, so ethnicity and date of birth, which is why Mr. Jai is from Asia, because people of Asian descent can be at higher risk of developing cardiovascular disease. We can then try and get into Mr. Jai's laptop. What a hint here, so we have to get his date of birth, so you can go back to the driving license. We get his date of birth, the 11th of March 1960, so 11/03/60. Opens up his laptop, and he's trying to buy, or he's bought a plane ticket to New York, which is 2nd class. So Mr. Jai has class 2 heart failure. And the flight number is actually how the grading system is written down for New York Health. The New York classification 2 of heart failure would be written down as NYHA2. So that's one of the codes to get out of the room. And you can see as you go through these different sections, you get ticked. You can now unfortunately, there's no way to stop somebody pressing complete. So I've actually shortcutted this a bit just for brevity to get through to the kitchen. So you can go through to this person's kitchen. You can look in their fridge to think about the foods they're eating. You get some information about smoking. You can see what they're buying here. So everything is a clue to what's going on with their heart failure. And then once you've finished it, you can go to the end of the room. Multiple ways you can write this down, but I'm just doing that because that's the way to do it. So that was the flight number, and you can click at the end for the clues. So this will tell the learner the clues that were in the room. So as they've gone through, it should be promoting or prompting them to think about what can cause heart failure, lifestyle changes, but also the sort of gamification where they're trying to figure out that he has type 2 classified heart failure, which is the step to get out of the room. So that's how you finish the room. And this will take you to the second room. Yeah, so I kind of feel like I've done a very quick whistle-top zoomed through that quite quickly. I hope it's made sense. I'll just go back to the presentation. So, oh no, that's wrong. Share slideshow. Does anyone else want to take over sharing at this point? Any questions? I'm not sure quite how this has been set up.
So, Mark,
now.
we do have a few questions in
Sure,
the
there
chat,
are, yeah.
and I will read them off for you. So the first one is, have you written a research paper linked to this process?
I haven't written. Okay, thank you. That's a good prompt. Thank you very much. So I've put in for ethics through the University of Sheffield. So this is going to get pilots. So I've shown this to tutors. So the tutors who will sit in the room. So I've had some feedback from them. I've had feedback with my colleagues in the other GPs who work for the University of Sheffield. So I've modified things a little bit from their feedback, but it's going to be piloted with medical students next week. So I've got a group of 6 who are piloting it next week, and then I can do a focus group with those students. I would like to have got some more groups, but I might have to do that a bit later on. So I've got 6 doing it next week. And yes, I'm going to try and get some informed, formalized feedback from the student body, which then I can fold back in the feedback back in. There's anything not worked, anything which they think is not pitched correctly, modifications can come. So this is kind of like step 1, first iteration, and then it can be developed from this point. So the student feedback is obviously an important process here, and I'm hopefully going to start getting that next week. Yes, and there's ethics to write this up as a whole process.
And then a second question that Michelle had was, will you describe your process in programming the avatars? So yeah, what was the thinking around that? Was there a design process that you went through with the student who helped work on the project?
Yeah, well, let me go to the edit room and then I can show you the script. Hopefully, is this how you get to the script?
Yeah, and then you click on add.
Yeah. Yes, so this script from, I think I've gone to the right room. So the majority of this script was written by the student. So one of the jobs, the tasks that one of the students, so Ben, fulfilled was to develop the script. Any idea, why wouldn't this scroll up? Any ideas? Because the whole script's above this. Any?
Can you click on it, Mark, and then see if it kind of activates the scroll bar? No? Or like click and drag upwards, it might force it to go up. That's strange, isn't it?
I've never ever seen this before. It would happen right now, wouldn't it? Normally I can just scroll up and edit.
It might be the browser.
Let me. If I just stop present, can I stop presenting for 1 second and then I can see if I can pull it up in a different browser? But I'll.
Sure.
Is that? Unless I go into, let's see if it's the same in a different room. So yes, but in answer to the question, yes, it was developed with a student. So a student wrote the script and we edited it together and we used, in fact, the bit that you can see, so I'm scripting loads of stuff now, minor panic mode. Why has it not come up? The bit you could see, which was, so when we tested it, what worked quite well was when you do the test, you can kind of edit it in when you're testing it. So you see the response, and then you can edit the response, and that helps modify how the avatar responds. So yes, it was developed with the students, and you can be quite forceful, like Matt said when he was presenting. You'd be quite forceful with the AI. You have to be very descriptive. So I've not taken out ask reciprocal questions at the start, because very often a patient will say to you, "How are you today?" That's quite a normal thing to say when a patient walks in the room or asks of the doctor. But sometimes you have to say, once you have an answer to question 1, ask question 2. Once you've had an answer to question 2, ask question 3. So you can get the AI to ask the student, as sitting there as the doctor, to ask questions like, so when's, let me see if I can get it to do it.
I've got it if you want me to share for you. And you can
yeah, please. Yeah, I'll stop sharing. So yeah, you can get it to ask reciprocal questions, which works really well. Yeah, so do I need further questions on my heart? And it picks out the answers really well. Yeah, what did the heart, so you see here, so it will force, so what did the heart tracing show? So it will force the avatar to ask the next question. So then it allows that flow of conversation. Before, when I was developing this, if you didn't put the forced question in, you would normally just get this bit of, I'd be expecting the student to ask the next question, which is what you might do as a more experienced doctor, where you would continue to give the information pitched at the right level for the patient. But I think in this scenario, it's useful for the students to have the prompt. So, can you tell me about the blood test? Can you tell me about the ECG? Can you tell me about my chest X-ray? What do we do next? So, it allows the student to understand the information they have to explain to patients. So that's part of the learning to be, I did admit, going back a couple of slides, I was talking about learning to be a doctor versus learning to pass exams. There's a lot of crossover in that, but it's how you apply the medicine. And so it's kind of trying to demonstrate to the students how you might bring out the information with a patient. So the questions from the avatar are actually quite valuable. Yeah. Does that answer the question? Sorry about the delays with trying to share. It didn't quite work. But thank you, Matt, for stepping in there.
Yeah, Michelle, I hope that answers your question. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to post in the chat. Mark, you also got, Lindsay said this is fantastic. Gabriella said this is great. And Gabriella had a follow-up question. How much did it take to program the whole escape room? I imagine this is in terms of timing.
It's been a journey, because I had different ideas along the way. I guess the whole thing is a learning process. So this is the first time I've done this. So I work for the university 2 days a week. They're my paid days, because I obviously work as a doctor the days a week. And I'd say a lot of the time, so for 2 days a week since January, I'd say the majority of my time has been spent trying to develop this. But I had different ideas along the way, trying to develop spaces in different ways. So it took about maybe 5 months, 2 days a week for the whole journey. But if I'd perhaps seen that I could have done this at the start in this way, it would have been a shorter period of time. It takes a while to get used to Wonda, but I think once you've got used to it and you understand how to use it and you spend a couple of days at it, things do speed up. So once you've developed one room, the next rooms get a lot easier to build, because you've got the ideas in your head. You understand the processes. So it kind of does snowball and the speed accelerates. Yeah, it is an outlay of time. But now, if the students endorse it and like it, I think I'll be able to develop a lot more of these quite quickly. So yeah, it's an investment of time, but if the students respond well to it, it's worth it. And I think, yeah, it's a good program. I mean, there's other stuff out there, obviously, but I think this is a very good program, and I feel happy with the results. Yeah. Yeah.
And Mark, we have a question from Jose who said, if you could mention the roles involved in creating the escape rooms, what roles would you mention?
Is in roles of the people involved who've created it? Is that?
That's a good question for Jose. I don't know, Jose, if you want to clarify if those are roles of people who created the escape rooms, but I would say yes, in terms of what the question says.
Yeah, so I mean, having the student involved at the start was really, thank you for clarifying. So yeah, having the student involved at the start was really important. They had a bit more time to delve into the development, and they figured out how to do things in Wonda with more time. The room that he developed, where you could look on the laptop, I think that's so complex to create that, and he had the time to do that. And also his input into what he thinks his student peers would respond well to. So that was really important. Having the team, the Wonda team within the University of Sheffield, so I could go to Dave, Matt, Mark is also a member of the team who's not there today. So just being able to talk to people, and also things that maybe I didn't think of quite intuitively, like, so getting the contrast right for these. I remember having a conversation with Matt, and he was talking about getting the contrast right, so students with different learning needs can pick up the writing correctly, make sure things are spaced correctly in the room, so you're not moving the viewer up and down, maybe in a more panoramic where you spin around. So making control of the room more simple as possible for the students, so they're not worried about that. They get the educational benefit. So it was, you know, that angle that came from the Wonda team within the University of Sheffield was really important from the Elevate team there. So and then I was putting the medical information in there, and thinking about how the real life, how it works, the patterns that we follow as general practitioners, and the questions that I'm used to fielding in work. So it's a collaborative effort. There's a lot of, there's lots of people who've put time into this, and I don't think I could have got it this good by myself, put it that way. I needed the other input. So yeah,
Yeah, it's such a collaborative effort, Mark, that you looped in so many different folks. Alan has a question on reusing of the content. So for future scenarios, could you just duplicate this scenario and potentially make a few tweaks if you want to do a different topic, for example, and make, for example, Mr. Josiah someone different, and then have it be, a different scenario where, it's not heart failure, but it's diabetes or something else, another condition.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where I think this might end up going. So now I've got so I use the 360 camera. So I probably mentioned that at one point. So to get the spaces, these 360 spaces, from our digital sensor at the University of Sheffield, I borrowed a 360-degree camera. So I'm not showing it in a minute. So you have to set this camera for the middle of the room. You click a timer, I walk out the room, close the door, and it takes a perfect 360-degree picture, and then you upload it into Wonda. So this space, I really should have explained this at the start. Sorry, it's a really good point. Now I've got this space. So the rooms you can walk around in Wonda, they're like the houses or the conference spaces. You delete the conference space, you change the 360 globe space, and then you can put avatars in it. And so Mr. Jaiser is essentially just floating in space, but you try and get the perspective right for the room. So now I've got the 360 photo. I've got the space to build this. Yeah, you can put different avatars in. You can create different scenarios like diabetes, mental health scenarios. So anything that would walk in through a general practitioner's door, I think is perfectly viable to put into this space. The home visit room, I put items in the room so I could pick them up. So you might have to manipulate that for a home visit scenario. But the room where this is a bit of the consultation room is a bit of a blank canvas, and you can build everything out the computer. So this, so this here, this sort of purple space here where it says electronic health record, that is an image which I built on PowerPoint, turned it into a JPEG and just brought it in, and I've just made it fit in front of the monitor. So I've got a blank version where the monitor is just there, but this is all layered from different images which I've imported. So when you click an icon, one image will disappear and the next image appears, but the images are on top of each other, so you don't know that it's changed. So it's all about layering it. So you click one icon, you have the show hide options on the icons. So I have the same image there 3 or 4 times. With each image, I have a slightly different thing on it. So when you click through, so when you click through, I've got to click this off.
I guess so, Mark, this is kind of a way that you approached it instead of, for example, needing to work in like Photoshop or Adobe or doing a lot of 360 image editing. Instead, you had this 360 image and then you were adding on top of that image directly in Wonda.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So it's all, it was just in the best, simplest and user-friendly way for me to build it from that out. Yeah. So yeah. So
I think that's great.
Yeah, so this is now obviously a different picture than the one that we started with, because this patient prescribing system is now on the other side. So yeah, that's just, so they're different layers. Okay, I've realized it's 6 o'clock here. It'll be at the hour at other parts in the world. So I should probably stop talking. But thank you for listening, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. I did have a final question, but I will hold it off. I'll wrap up, and if anyone wants to stay on after the top of the hour, I will ask the question of you all if you can stay on for a few minutes longer and discuss further. And I think there was another question in the chat. But before we wrap up, if anyone has to hop off, please join our next session. It's going to be on July 22nd. It's a Tuesday, again, at 12 p.m. Eastern. And it will be a build your own workshop. So we'll be workshopping together around how to build using Wonda. And so we'll be testing with prompting and environment creation. And you will walk away from the 1-hour workshop with your very own simulation. So it's an exciting way to test. We won't be building what Mark built, but we will be helping people think about how to build up to that, or like build the building blocks so that you have all the skills to get there. And with that, I would like to thank everyone for joining our session today, and to thank our presenters, Matt, Dave, Mark. This was a fascinating conversation. I love the work that you're doing. And I'm going to ask a follow-up question. If for anyone who wants to stay on, I'm curious what advice you would give to folks who are looking to create, whether it's to amplify student voice around AI, or to amplify student voice in general in the higher ed ecosystem, or in Mark's case for medical education. What advice would you give to folks who are trying to do this work?
I'll try and answer that question. Actually, I mean, I think mainly certainly for our point of view, thinking about equity of access is probably the key part. I think we all have students whose voices we already hear regularly, which is terrific, as I said at the top of the presentation. But I think thinking very carefully about those voices we don't hear, or whatever those invisible or those visible barriers may be, strongly considering going to quote unquote minority groups, or going to those who perhaps you don't see volunteering, or maybe accessing student networks for certain groups or certain type of student. I think that's a very good way to start reaching out. And technology such as this really does make that a lot easier.
I think that's a great point. I don't know if Matt, Mark, you have anything to add on to that.
Yeah,
I'd just chime in. Sorry, Mark. From a practical point of view, I guess I had experience in sort of stress testing the prompts that I was putting in based on all of this, what was essentially an interview with students. And it took a little while to get it to a point where it was kind of behaving in the way I wanted to. So I guess it's just experimenting with it and starting out with your particular use case, it might be something completely different to what we've done, but with the same kind of principles applied. And I think Wonda's got loads of really good guidance on prompt building. Have a read through that, and yeah, you just kind of have to really whip it into shape bit by bit, and then yeah, ends up with a really interesting product at the end. So experiment would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I think I would just be. I'm always keen to keep the students involved, to keep the student engaged. We need to develop teaching sessions and teaching material that students want to engage with. So if the students can be there when we're designing things, that's important. We know that large lectures aren't what students want to be involved in. It's good from our perspective to deliver mass information to a large number of people straight away. But if there's other ways to do that, and if AI can do this, so maybe students spend more time at home and they work through different scenarios as this develops and expands in different ways. I think it's just getting the students involved. It should never take over from some of the teaching that we do, because I think there's a societal importance that the students do get together and see each other. But if they, I just think having the students involved and developing teaching materials that they want to see is really important. Yeah.
I love all of the points that you've made. Dave, I 100% agree on access, and I love the way that you flip it, using AI to actually talk about AI, I think is genius. And the fact that it actually opens up the world for so many students who might not necessarily be able to be physical or be present, or to contribute their thoughts, or maybe feel worried about potential backlash about their use of a technology or their opinions in a space, and that's why they don't speak up. This is a great way to put those opinions and those viewpoints out there while making people still feel safe. And Matt, I couldn't agree with you more on experimentation. That's what actually brought me to Wonda, is I was a researcher experimenting with this technology, and I think it's constantly changing, and so how do we understand what the bounds are is really through experimentation and tweaking and seeing what happens, and then testing and piloting with learners. And Mark, to your point about looping students as co-creators into the process, and this whole presentation, both use cases looped in students into that creation process, I think is especially powerful, because students feel agency in their own learning when they're looped in, and they feel like they're active participants. And I can't imagine a better way to engage students in actually bringing them into the learning creation process. So thank you again, Mark, Dave, Matt, for joining. This has been a fantastic session. You can see from the comments in the chat, everyone enjoyed your use cases and the examples that you've shared. And we're looking forward to see how this work evolves. And Mark, we're looking forward to seeing how the results from the pilot. And thank you so much again.